You know, one of the biggest marketplaces, one of the most lucrative investment opportunities is male loneliness. You know, I think there's a vested interest for certain people to make sure that the relations between men and women continue to be at an all-time low. Because you see, when men and women are having relationships, getting married and having children, all of the money that formerly the man used to earn, which is now split between men and women, at least for the last 70 years, all of that money would be reinvested, so to speak, into the family. But when you splinter the money and the relationship, you end up with a lot of lonely men and lonely women. But you see, women, they tend to spend their money in the form of debt. So there isn't really any value creation there. It's like a black hole. The money gets spent and corporations clean up, you know, like makeup and fashion and whatever women spend their money on. But a lot of it is in the form of debt. Whereas men, especially when they're lonely, all they do is go to work. They go to work and earn money. And what do they do with it? They spend it on gambling. They spend it on dating apps. They spend it on prostitution. They spend it on video games. They spend it in gyms. They spend it in all of these ways. Well, except for video games, they spend it in a lot of ways to try and attract women, and yet the elusive woman is ever elusive. But they're still spending their money. Only, rather than the money going into the family, it's just being spent on nothing. And while all this is going on, you know, if you've got men and women both earning, they're both being taxed. It's just a transfer of wealth from the people to the government and corporations, which are really one and the same thing. The government and corporations, they're in it together. At least at the very top. You know, this is why the poor get poorer and the rich get richer, and this has been the case for 40 years, 50 years now. The gap between the rich and the poor has never been so great. Probably since feudalism, since you had peasants that worked on the land that was owned by the kingdom. It's never been so bad. And we actually work more now than we did back then, believe it or not. So we work more and we're poorer. In terms of the how much money you have relative to your material standards or subsistence. But this male loneliness is going to become a really big problem. even though women are single, they never really experience loneliness, because they always have, no matter where they go, people trying to talk to them, trying to do things for them, trying to help them in some way. Whereas men can go 2, 5, 10, 20 years with nothing, with no prospects. But it's all going to come to a head because men also do need some kind of incentive to go out into the world and do things, and if they're not being rewarded with women and kids, they're going to stop. And then that money that's so far quite lucrative, or the government and corporations capitalising on male loneliness, this will come to an end, because the Western trend now is following what we've been seeing in Japan with the hikikomori of the men dropping out of work and society in general. This is just going to keep getting worse. So rather than men earning money, they're now claiming it off the government. You're going to have a smaller portion of men that are basically the only life support for the entire system through their tax contributions, that are essentially feeding and clothing the rest. And that won't go on for long, because the men that are paying into the system will start to wise up. And this government in the United Kingdom is the worst that's ever been seen. We have no culture anymore. The internet has replaced it, and the overwhelming immigration has diluted the culture to such an extent that, other than superficial corporate-driven trends or media trends, there is no culture. It doesn't exist. You only have various enclaves that are all vying for attention, vying for power, and they all get their little spotlight, but there's no social cohesion, there's no archetypal culture or belief, no real moral structure anymore. Culture is informed mostly by religion, which then informs the morality, but all this is breaking down. You're going to see the absolute degradation or desecration of morality, ethics. It's going to become every man for themselves. Global wars are always ongoing. Seems like the Ukraine-Russia war is going to end now, because that business has been done with. The Democratic government in America has gone in and funded the war enough now that the damage has been done. So now Trump can come in and rebuild it. And what was formerly Russian, Ukrainian land and agriculture and commerce will now be under the control of the Americans to a large extent. Which will affect global food prices and so on. Subscribe for more videos.